Hey guys, it's Ben. This is a voiceover review of the new, upcoming stickerless, magnetized, face-turning octahedron from DianSheng. I was sent a prototype version to review courtesy of them, so keep in mind that the puzzle in this video may end up being slightly different from the production version, though it will likely be the same. As of now, this puzzle is already available for pre-order from some stores, so check the video description for price details, and any additional updates will be added there. So with that, let's get into it. The puzzle came shipped in a cardboard box with a very nice complimentary sticker from DianSheng. I really have to thank them for producing this puzzle and finally filling a void we've had for over 5 years now. The packaging of the FTO is a simple paper box with no extra accessories, and personally I like the simplicity and not having to worry about extra accessories. We also get a solution manual which shows a piece-by-piece method, solving the corners first, then triangles, and finally the edges, but hopefully people won't be using that. Finally, we have the puzzle itself. First of all, it looks simply beautiful. The stickerless design is very well done with perfect seams between the caps, and the color shades are vibrant and easy to distinguish, although the gray face does have a brownish hue to it, but I don't mind it at all. Most WCA hardware these days comes with a frosted finish on the plastic, but the surface finish on the DianSheng FTO is a very nice glossy plastic, which is super refreshing. The second thing we notice is the smaller size of this FTO compared to other ones on the market, and even custom hardware. It measures 56mm between opposite faces, give or take a tiny bit, with an edge length of 67.5mm. This makes it smaller and slightly more rounded over than a LAN FTO, but it is slightly sharper on the edges compared to a RexTO. As for how it compares in size to the 2-layer and 4-layer FTOs, I'll let this speak for itself. Out of the box, the turning is quite light and fast, with a light to medium magnetic click between each turn. It's much lighter in turning compared to a LAN FTO or RexTO and feels incredibly smooth with a hint of swishiness. I was also very happy to see this puzzle came lubed correctly from the factory. All of the pieces had an even coating of lube on all surfaces, which means DianSheng knew how to lube the separate orbits of pieces necessary for it to spread evenly. Taking a look at the mechanism, the edge pieces hook under hidden center pieces that screw into an 8-arm core, and this is familiar to what we've seen before, but the new DianSheng FTO comes with some nice upgrades. The outer pieces have a hexagonal surface pattern on them to help improve the turning feel, and we can see the visible magnets between the corners and triangles in mid-turn. Speaking of, the magnet positioning in this puzzle is quite interesting. Taking off the triangle caps, we can see there are a total of 3 sets of magnets that attract each other. One set is between the corners and triangles, and the other 2 sets are between the triangles and edges. This means that the triangles will attract other edge pieces in mid-turn, but there is little to no magnetic bump that can actually be felt, so these sets of edge magnets are much weaker than those in the corners. After breaking in the FTO and relubing it with 30K silicone, the sound of the turning has become more subdued and the swishiness has mostly went away. It should be noted that this puzzle does have to be kept at a tight tension, which I'll get into more later. But at working tensions, the corner cutting is about 2/3 of the piece on adjacent layers and about half of the piece across the diagonal layers, with negligible to no reverse corner cutting. Now this isn't much, in fact it's about the same amount of corner cutting I get on my modded LAN FTO, but I found that I usually didn't need much. Occasionally the puzzle wouldn't flow between turns in some solves or algorithms in isolation, but it wasn't bad enough or common enough to be frustrating at all. I can still do all of my common finger tricks fine, and the magnets align the puzzle well between each turn. One other thing worth mentioning is the lighter weight of the new DianSheng FTO compared to previous FTOs. A typical LAN and typical RexTO weigh 145 grams and 105 grams respectively, getting up to triple digits. But the DianSheng weighs in at 87 grams, which is closer in weight to fully magnetic 3x3 cubes people are used to these days. I enjoy the lighter weight of this FTO, and it makes it more enjoyable to do longer solving sessions. So now let's directly compare the mechanism of the DianSheng FTO to the ones that came before it. We now have 3 different FTOs that people have used for speed solving, and each of them have a different piece design. The LAN FTO has a cylindrical profile for its mechanism, which you can see here. This surface is flat and runs perpendicular to this face, which lies on the axis of rotation. This allows the layers to pull outwards while keeping an even contact with pieces, but lends itself to a more blocky piece design and only really works well for face-turning cubes, where all of the layers meet at 90-degree angles. On the other hand, for the FTO, it uses a spherical profile so that this surface is curved, which prevents the layers from pulling outwards entirely. This makes the puzzle very stable and simplifies the piece design, but has less flexibility for corner cutting. Finally, let's look at the DianSheng FTO, where it uses a conical mechanism. The profile is flat once again, but instead of the surface being perpendicular to this face, it is instead parallel to this adjacent face. So the mechanism actually avoids getting closer to that outer surface. This also means the layer will make no contact with the pieces below when it is pulled out. And I believe it is this conical profile of the tracks that mainly contributes to this puzzle's very light and fast feel, while also helping to prevent corner twists as a bonus. This does sacrifice some stability compared to the other designs though. For example, it's easier to pull a corner piece outwards on the assembled puzzle, but the 3 sets of magnet positioning seem to counteract that instability well enough, and it hasn't been an issue for me during solves. I've had the DianSheng FTO-M prototype for 2 weeks now as of this video. I've done about 350 timed solves, as well as a bunch of untimed solves, and so far, I'm enjoying it. The puzzle is very nice and satisfying to turn, and actually feels similar to an original Moyu Weilong from 2013, if any of you guys remember that cue, but with lighter and faster turning. I've set a personal best average of 100 of 23.47 seconds, my first sub 24, which I honestly wasn't expecting so soon, but in the end, I was able to adjust to the puzzle well. I do think my FTO performs a bit better though. I can turn harder on that puzzle with less risk, and it also has slightly better corner cutting. But I've also had that FTO for over 2 years now, and getting to try the new DianSheng FTO really made solving enjoyable for me again. With that said, this puzzle wasn't without some issues. Some corner caps would occasionally pop off the piece, usually when flicking the layer with my finger in a certain spot, and they would have to be pushed back in. This is very easy to fix, but was a little annoying. Also, one of the magnets in the corner piece actually fell out of the socket, and I ended up having to glue it back in place to keep it there. I think the biggest problem is that the puzzle has to be kept at a tight tension to keep the edges from popping. In fact, it's easier for the edge pieces to pop out of the core of the puzzle than for the triangles to pop on the outside, and I find I have to pop the edges out directly in order to disassemble it at all. I haven't had an edge pop in the middle of any of my solving sessions yet, but other testers have reported it happening to them more than once, possibly due to the core stripping and loosening screws with extended use, which is something to keep in mind. I'm not sure if the edge popping is something that can be fixed without a mechanical redesign, but if the core threads are in fact stripping, I hope that can be addressed in the future. Even with those problems in mind, I still think this FTO is going to be the best one to get for most people. If you don't have an FTO, you should get this one, and if you already have a LAN FTO, even if it's monitor magnetized, you should still get this one. The DianSheng FTO won't be much more expensive than a LAN anyways. Current pricing suggests it'll be under $20, so there's really no reason not to get it. But if you have a good FTO and are happy with it, I would still recommend at least trying the DianSheng, perhaps at a competition if you can find someone who has it, because you may end up liking it more. A well set up FTO is still competitive with this puzzle, so I think it will come down to preference for top speed solvers. Nonetheless, it's really great to finally see new hardware like this hit the market and be accessible for beginner and veteran solvers alike. That's all I have to say about this puzzle for now. Thanks to DianSheng for sending one to me for testing, and massive thanks to Lu Zhihai, or Large Cuber, for keeping our community in touch with DianSheng throughout the development process. Thanks for watching.